Hello, everyone. Welcome to our online Youth Empowerment Conference Q&A session with Coach Joseph and Coach Grace. We are tackling relationships. Our first question is, porn addiction has been so rampant in our days. As young people, how do we overcome sexual temptations as we wait also on God for the right partner?
We want to look at the havoc or the danger of pornography and its addiction, because unless you know the danger of it, you won't work hard to avoid it if you are not already in that addiction, and if you're not there, you will keep off. And I want to just tackle maybe 3 or 4 things. Number one, you have to understand that pornography is progressive. It's the nature of sin, because number one, it's sin. It's the nature of sin that slowly but surely disarms you and brings you to a point or to a level whereby you cannot stay without it, and you can't do without it. And once it has brought you to that level, then you become a slave of pornography as an addiction, and it becomes the master, and therefore you don't have power over it, but it has power over you, and it controls you. And because its nature is sinful, it makes you dirty, it leaves you with guilt and condemnation and shame, and therefore you live in a dark world, while when people are looking at you, they think you are okay. Number 2, when somebody is addicted to pornography, when it comes to the issue of marriage, it also affects your marriage. And it affects your marriage in this sense, that marriage is meant to be fulfilling and for pleasure and for procreation in marriage. And it's supposed to be a fellowship and union that brings the two people or the spouse together, and also God is involved in it because He instituted it. But now pornography removes God, removes union and fellowship between a husband and wife, because it becomes a selfish gratification which lacks the order by which it was instituted to be done. And therefore you find somebody will be cheating, and in the privacy of his or her life is engaging in that pornography to the level whereby they get gratification without engaging in sex the way God designated it to be. Number 3, it also brings perversion. When one is addicted to pornography, since pornography by itself, it wants to glorify the act of sex without the methodology or the way it is done. So you find it introduces what we call homosexual in it, lesbianism, beastly, and all other perversion which God never created. And once somebody is involved in that perversion, it stretches now to the spirit. It becomes a spiritual problem. Because I want to understand something. Sex was instituted by God as an act of worship to a spouse or to a couple who are married. And so once it's perverted, it opens one to spiritual repercussions, whereby he begins to get tormented and harassed by demons. So this person, he gets obsessed, and even to a level, at times it can go to a level whereby he lacks control, and therefore it becomes a possession. And when it reaches that kind of a level, it's not only a problem that needs professionalism, as we shall be looking at the cures, but it needs one to go through deliverance. I think I want to go back to Coach Grace and to take us to the other point.
So I would say when it comes to addiction, the first thing we need to realize or to do is to get real with ourselves and tell and admit to ourselves that we have a problem. You'll only look for a solution when you realize you have a problem. And many times, many people do not even want to admit that they have an addiction issue. So I just want to give you a few signs before we go to the next level. The few signs that I can give us is compulsive masturbation, molestation, multiple affairs, compulsive use of pornography, cyber sex. These are just a few types of addictions that you could be in. And in case you find yourself in one of these, the best thing that you need is you need professional help. And also know that in case you are full of guilt and shame, our God is merciful, and when you run to him, he will help you. So I tell you, if in case you find yourself in any form of addiction, you need professional help and counseling.
As we conclude on this subject matter, I want to quote Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 22. This is a letter he was writing to Timothy, who was 17 years old. So he was a young person. And he's telling him in verse 22 of chapter 2 of 2 Timothy, flee youthful lusts. The word lust connotes a strong desire or appetite. And it can go without saying that young people, because of their age and as they are growing up and the kind of diet they take, it means that there are things that are attractive and there are things that are addictive. And therefore, the word of God is saying that one should avoid those youthful lusts. And number one thing I would encourage somebody to avoid is to avoid any materials that are pornographic. It could be a book, it could be a movie, or it could be even some sites, websites that promote addiction. You flee from such. Any appearance of sexual sin and impurities, one should be able to avoid them.
Very true. Job chapter 31 and verse 1, Job said, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. So the first gateway that you're supposed to deal with is the gateway of your eyes, because your eyes are the ones that open up your heart and your emotions. So take care of what you are watching. Number two, take care of what you think about. As a man thinks, so is he. Set your thoughts on things that are good or things that are right.
Be careful on what you meditate upon.
Very true. Another point is avoid flattering your mouth. Be careful what you speak, because what you speak has a way of affecting the other person. So avoid flattering and even flirting with the opposite sex. Get away from anything of your touching. Touching has a way of connecting. We connect when we touch one another. So if you want to flee temptations, flee from touching, okay? And be godly conscious. Be godly conscious. Know everything that you're doing, God is seeing. Be very aware of, be godly conscious, and also consider the consequences of the choices that you want to make. I hope with these few points, we've been able to help you on how to deal with addictions and temptations.
Hey, my name is Michael Monyom, aka Lee. Most people call me Monyom Lee. I am from Nairobi, Kenya. A professional musician. I mean, talk about music theory, music instruments, production, vocals, pretty much everything about music. Allow me to do a song called Christ is Enough by a song, because Christ is really enough. And I'm gonna mash it up with a song called Sitekete, just to show how strong I am through Christ who strengthens me. Enjoy. Christ is my reward, the honor my devotion. There is nothing in this world that ever satisfies me. Through every trial, my soul will sing, no turning back. I've been set free. Christ is enough for me. Christ is enough for me. Everything I need is in you. Everything I need. Siangami, sigarikishwi, ukonami, sitekete, sigarikishwi, nasema sigarikishwi, ukonami, upimi kwa muda, upimi kwa mwaka, unatafsiri majira, huzuiwi na muda, umejawa na nguvu, ndiyo maana nakuita Baba, nakuita Baba, la-da-da-da-da-da.
Hi, Coach Boniface Guitar here, and I will be doing Q&A on the area on career. So the question that somebody asked is, how do you write an outstanding CV or resume, and how do you prepare for an interview? So what I'm going to do actually is first address the issue of writing a CV. Now, assuming that most of you students waiting to graduate, some of you will be graduating soon or just recently graduated. And one of the questions that often people ask, when you go out for interviews, they will ask you, what experience do you have? And that becomes a roadblock, wondering now, what should I do? I don't have much experience. I've just graduated. All I have is my certificate, diploma, or degree. What should I do? So when it comes to CV writing, you really have to think outside the box. You have to think of what exactly is going to make you sell, what is going to make you stand out. There's so many people out there who are sending out CVs. So let me just highlight several things. Number one, what you need to do is you need to tailor make your CV based on the position that you're applying for. Okay, so that's a key thing, because sometimes people end up writing a lot of information that is really not necessary, doesn't fit for this position. Remember, there are tons of resumes and CVs that potential employers are looking at, so it has to be one that is standing out. So you need to see, do I fit the need that they're looking for? So you're trying to pull the different experiences that you have had to fit exactly what you're looking for, because that's a key thing. So you need to do that. Find out if you need to find out more information. If that's not already provided, that would be the best thing to do. So just make sure that has been tailor-made. Now, the other thing is, question becomes, what do I do since I don't have a lot of experience? So what you need to do, think about, are there places where you did an internship? All right, so that experience counts. So you need to highlight that, because sometimes people just say, well, it was just a short internship of 1 month or 3 months, or might even be longer or even shorter, but still that's your experience. So you need to highlight that experience, and rather than focus on how short it was, in fact, I would, unless it's required to give that information, how long you did the internship, you can go ahead and provide that information. But if not, I want you to think about how you will focus on what you did, what that experience you had as for your internship. So you need to give a description of that. The other area that you need to touch on is, are there places that you volunteered while you were a student? Maybe you were involved in a certain club, and you did maybe community programs or different kind of things. So sometimes people don't think that as students, like, does that really matter? Because they're thinking more in terms of a job that you got and you were paid. So you may not have a job that you were paid, but you're taking that experience where you worked to do something, because what they're looking for is, what kind of skills? Are you self-motivated? Are you responsible? Do you take initiative? You see, these are things that they're looking for. So take those experiences where you volunteered somewhere and you did something. So talk about those experiences. Now, the other thing along with that is, did you hold any position? Maybe some of you were a leader in certain groups within your university. That is a key thing, because that speaks about your leadership skills, okay? So you need to write down, sit down, before you write your resume, write down all these different points, okay, that you need to prepare to write your CV. Okay, so once you've done that, also think about additional training that you've taken other than your college. Because think about it, if you graduated, whether it's in education, there are thousands of other people graduated education. So anybody else, just like most of you are doing, taking classes with us and courses with us, this will count too, because you're one step ahead of your peers, and that's the whole essence. Are there other small courses that you've taken here and there, and you have certificates? So you need to present that in your resume, because we live in a very competitive world, especially when unemployment is so high. Then you have to think about, what more do I have to bring to the table? So a couple of other things that you need to keep in mind is, most of the time people, when it comes to writing, okay, what they did, they focus on the responsibilities rather than the results. In other words, if you are hired to do, just as an example, say typesetting or typewriting, okay, so that's all you write. That's a responsibility. Did you add value? What results did you bring? You need to go the extra mile. So most plain CVs and resumes just simply state responsibility. In other words, this is what the boss gave you when you joined the company, but it doesn't show how you made a difference. So what is interesting, by the way, we are going to tailor make a course next coming year, hopefully academic year, where we'll teach on how to prepare a resume or a CV, and how to prepare for a job interview. So there's a lot we learned. So I'm just giving you snippets. So there'll be more to come. If you do continue the program and you're part of this program, at some point you will get to take this class. So something else, and I found this to be interesting. Unfortunately, people don't take time to proofread their CVs, so it has typos, grammatical errors, and guess what? They put that aside no matter how qualified you are. In fact, I was talking to one time a businesswoman, and she does a lot of training, different actually there in Nairobi, Kenya, doing different projects. And one of the things that really disappoints and puts her off is to get a resume and seeing typing errors. You know, that you only have one shot to make a first impression. So if you mess it up there, guess what? They will go to the next person. So let me touch on a little bit when it comes to interviews. Like I say, this is just snippets. If you really want to learn more, we will have a course tailor-made for this. So when it comes to interviews, how prepared are you? All right, did you find out more information about this company? You know, do your background work, all right? Did you find out more information about this position? Always remember, when it comes to hiring, they're not doing you a favor. They are contracting you to provide a service. So you have to put your best foot forward. You have to present yourself with confidence. All right, because confidence plays a big role. So we'll talk about different things that you can do to prepare yourself. You know, I know one of the biggest mistakes, and I want to point out here, is that if you ask the question, why do you want this job? You know, people go on a rant talking about their problems, their issues. They don't have money. They really need a job. They need to support their family. I tell you what, if you're looking for sympathy, you will not get a job on those grounds. What they're looking for is somebody who will bring value to the table. So once you start talking about your problems and how desperate you are to get a job, immediately they see this is a problematic person. They're looking at what they can get out of the company rather than what they can bring into the company. So remember, it is a business transaction when you're going for an interview, and they're looking for the very best. So therefore, you have to fully prepare yourself. So like I said, this is just an intro. If you really want to learn more, continue in this program. At some point, we are going to teach a full course, and because we want to prepare you. Our prayer and our desire is that the students and NVSL will be students of excellence, that when you go out there, you will have a winning resume, you will have a winning CV, you will be able to excel above your peers. And the way to do that is to apply the principles that we're teaching you. And if you follow that path, we are believing that God will make a way for you. So thank you very much, and hopefully that answers some of the questions that you might have.
Hi everyone, my name is Rispankada. I am a student at New Vision School of Leadership, and I want to thank the organizers of this conference for giving me an opportunity to share with you my story. I was a student at Kenya School of Revenue, and I graduated with a diploma in Customs Administration. After graduating from school, I decided to carve my path to business. And what really inspired me to start a business was the joy and fulfillment of having an income based on your own effort. So I started with a very basic one. I started selling mini mandazi and donuts. I was so excited to see it grow so well, and after some time, but I ended shutting it down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently, I'm doing agribusiness and I'm loving my new venture. Just like any other business, I had challenges. I met rude clients, stiff competition in the market, and my major challenge was finding and retaining customers for my products. Considering that people tend to run away when they learn that your business has little experience, or you have little experience in the market. So I knew I needed to do something if I really wanted to outdo my colleagues. My major focus was making my customers happy, listening to their complaints and feedbacks, and making my products quality. So after a short period of time, I gained few loyal customers, and these customers started referring me to their friends, and you know what that means in business. More referrals means more sales, and that is how I overcame that challenge. New Vision School of Leadership has greatly empowered me, and I really thank God for that. I have developed skills that I found very useful in life and in my business venture. I learned how to be consistent, persistent, and to be passionate about my goals. At some point in life, you feel as if you are at the verge of giving up because you realize you've given your all, you've given your best, and your best feels as if it's not enough because the results you get are not fulfilling. You feel as if you've wasted yourself, but at such moments, I kept reminding myself that winners never quit and quitters never win, and I was never born a loser. So I had to stay true to my dreams, and I had to stay true to myself. I love to think of myself so positive, and I kept reminding my inner self that there is nothing more beautiful than the strength and determination of a girl who knows what she wants in life, a girl with passion, a girl who goes out and beyond to achieve whatever she sets her mind into. So that kept me going for so long, and I'm so glad that I never gave up. My advice to anyone who wants to start business is just believe in yourself and don't give up. Just start with what you can. Thank you.
Hello, this is your coach, Tony Harris, coming to you from the US of A. I hope that you all are doing well on your side of the globe in Kenya. It is an honor to be with you this evening as we are answering questions, two questions in particular, one on the topic of mental health and how that affects us. And then secondly, also on grief. And so I want to look at those two questions. The first question I'm going to answer today in the first session is on grief. Now, grief is something that we all will experience in life. Grief. Grief can come because of something sad that has happened, such as a death. We also look at grief in the context of loss. Grief and loss. Grief is what happens on the inside. It's how we feel on the inside. And then we look at the context of mourning, what it means to mourn. Mourning and grief are two sides of the same coin. Grief is what we feel on the inside. Mourning is the expression of our grief on the outside. And what would allow us to experience that grief? We often reply that there is a loss of something. Now, when we talk about loss, there is the loss that comes from a death experience. There is the loss of some people who actually lose a member of their body. And so that is like a type of death experience. And then there is the loss of relationships, where we grieve relationships that used to be intact but are no longer there. And then we talk about other types of loss, such as the financial loss, loss of being able to provide an income, which causes us to grieve sometime. And sometimes we even mourn those things that we lose in expressions of our feelings. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about grief today. Grief, as I said, is what we feel. It is a state or the condition that we are in. We are grieving this sad experience. We are mourning, demonstrating our outward expressions of how we feel on the inside. And grief affects people in many different ways. There is no one way to grieve. If you look at different cultures, today I was watching a Samoan culture, and all the men, they grieve by chanting and doing a war dance and moving and stomping, and they would do movements like this, and they would express themselves crying and weeping, and yet they're shouting and they are celebrating and crying out, but they are mourning on the outside the feelings that they have on the inside. And a lot of times it's hard to come to terms with the loss. The death of a loved one can cause one to grieve in such a way that they feel hopeless, Now, many times when a person is grieved, we look at some of the signs and symptoms of grief. You say, well, what are those signs and symptoms of grief? We often refer to those signs and symptoms such as denial, anger, bargaining. You talk about the young lady, Kubler-Ross, who had a book that was on death and dying, and she listed 5 ways that a person can experience grief, and one is through depression, anger, bargaining, and finally they will come to acceptance. And there are many other feelings that a person can experience when it comes to grief. But these were just the internal things that we feel that affects our mind, our body, our spirit, and our will and our very emotions, all that we are in the fullness of our being. And so oftentimes we need what you call grief support or grief counseling. We need someone to talk to. Oftentimes when a loved one passes away, we don't know what to say or know what to do. In my practice as a chaplain, I generally ask 3 questions. The first question is this: if your loved one could say something to you, what would they want you to know? And being able to think about that. If they could say something, say you lost a mother, a father, sister, brother, a great friend, oftentimes they may not have had an opportunity to tell you what they thought. But if you were to ask yourself, if they could say something to me right now, what would they want me to know? Often I hear people say things like they would want me to know that they love me, that they're going to be okay, that they're in heaven now, or they would say something that they have always said to them to remind them. Then the second question is, if they could say something, if they could ask you to do something for themselves, for you, or for someone else, what would your loved one want you to do? This becomes a cornerstone question because it gives you some grief work to do. It gives you some hope. It is a hope-based question that gives you some practical things that you can do to continue to extend their life and celebrate their life and honor their life by answering that question. What would they want you to do for them? Maybe it would pick up the mantle and become the patriarch or the matriarch of the family. They would want you to take on that role. Or maybe they would want you to finish a task that they were no longer able to complete. Maybe it was something that they told you to do, to go back to school to get your education. Maybe they said, you know what, I want my life to be an extension to reach out to other people and to organize an event that will cause other people to come together to honor my life, to honor the thing that I loved. Whether, I asked one lady that question, and she said, well, my mother loved to run. She loved to walk, and she loved to run. So every year they organized a walkathon in her name. What would they want you to do? That is the question. And then the last question is, what do you want them to know? Oftentimes we don't get an opportunity to say anything to our loved one, but if you do, let them know. Tell them what they mean to you. Express those feelings. Answer those 3 questions and tell them how you feel, how much you love them. And even have the conversation that was difficult, even about a disappointment, so that you don't have any regrets when your loved one is gone or when you go through a loss. Oftentimes when a person goes through a loss, they experience fatigue, they get depressed, they're no longer eating, they're not functioning the way that they used to, they isolate themselves, and they feel hopeless. When you ever get to that point, always reach out for help. Let somebody know that you're struggling. You cannot grieve alone. Sometimes we have to cry alone. Sometimes we have to mourn by ourselves. But grief is a communal affair. You need one another. So please reach out to someone, get some support, talk to a grief counselor, talk to someone who's been through what you're going through, and you will find strength for the journey that is ahead. This is Coach Tony Harris. I hope this has been beneficial to you. If you haven't heard anything else, just remember those 3 questions. I think they can help you out a whole lot on the issue of grief. Remember, grief is something that we all will experience. Mourning is how we express that grief. And there is no one right way to grieve. Feel what you feel, and it's okay. But when you stop functioning, and this is going on, you're crying for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, you are running on signs of depression, get a counselor, talk with someone, let somebody know that you need help. God bless you. Again, this is Chaplain Coach Tony Harris. Thanks for being with me.
My name is Kevin Odhiambo Apodo, an investigative journalist from Anderson School of Journalism, and I'm also the author of the book Workplace Chronicles. Having worked in various environments, I saw the challenges that employees go through in their places of work, and that is what motivated me to write this book, because I thought it would be best if I put it in form of writing. My book talks about unemployment among the youth, mental health issues employees go through in their places of work, the future of work, and specifically in Africa. And the big question there is, are we ready as a continent for the future of work? Also, among other issues, is the issue of financial investment among employees. Some of the major challenges I faced writing this book or even publishing it was distraction. Like, you'd find that I sit down to start writing, then something comes up. And then the second one was financial hiccups. By the time I was done writing the book, I didn't have the finances to publish it. So to overcome all these challenges, first I dedicated my time to write the book, and I planned myself properly so that when it was time to write, I would put off my phone and purely do the writing. For the finances, it was out of the connections that I made with people, because it's a friend who came to my rescue and published the book after I had knocked several doors. Since I joined NVSL, I've gained a lot of exposure and experience. I've gained a lot of knowledge, and that has given me the thought of even doing another book. By the time I'll be done with NVSL, I think I shall have gained the knowledge that I require to do 2 or even 3 books as my next project. NVSL, through the people I got to meet, I've created a lot of networks, and through the networks I've got to make some sales of this book. The founder himself, Martynas, wrote my book, and actually was the first person to buy, so at least I appreciate the network. The advice I can give to someone who is starting to write, or somebody who is dreaming to become a writer someday, is that for you to become a good writer, you have to read a lot. And always write. just write, even if you don't have the finances or the capital to publish the book or the material. Just write, because one day, one time, when somebody come across your content and they find it worth it, they can even, just like my friend and Boniface did to me, they can even volunteer to publish it for you for free. So always read a lot and always write a lot.